The biggest disappointments in college football for me so far this year. And Florida State's got to lead that list. And this is not going to be a whack-a-mole segment for Florida State because I got like 4 or 5 other programs that I want to hit. But the wrong portal quarterback in DJ, I think it's very apparent at this point. They're getting run on. You know, their strength should have been the line of scrimmage. That's all we listened to during spring and fall camp. And again, I've gone over this. I'm going to say it one more time. I don't think the folks who cover Florida State were lying about the talent on that roster. I don't think Nick Saban, when he went and watched them practice and picked them to win the ACC, was lying or was deceived about the talent on that roster. I don't think the NFL scouts that were cited publicly and that I spoke to personally who went through Tallahassee during fall camp were lying to me about the talent on the roster. It's just not a good football team. And so they're getting run on. They can't run it. It's just a total fraud alert of a team. And it's very disappointing. They were 18th in points per game last year. They are 124th. In fact, it's Tuesday. It's weird to do this. Padlock stat. FSU last year, 18th points per game, 124th this year. And honestly, when producer Jesse gave me that number, I was surprised they were as high as 124. Like, there are teams out there worse at scoring the football right now than Florida State. You want to pray for someone, pray for those teams tonight. Notre Dame is a big disappointment to me so far this year. And they're banged up now. I see they're losing guys by the day on the offensive line. But the Northern Illinois loss is still fresh in my mind. Now, they cleansed the palate this past weekend. Ramen Noodle Express may not have gotten much right, but, buddy, Notre Dame minus 7.5. Notre Dame covered that thing in about 5 seconds and never looked back. But how can we forget? How can we forget the Northern Illinois loss? And how can I forget them losing to Marshall and Stanford 2 years ago? And how all this sort of gets lumped into losing to unranked opponents, losing as a double-digit favorite at home, because it's happened a few times now. It's happened. And there are still no elite pieces. And when I say elite pieces, you know what I mean. I mean a unit over on the offensive side of the ball. And I am disappointed because I wanted more. I am frequently labeled a Notre Dame hater, despite the fact that I'm sitting here with balled-up fists wanting them to be elite, because I am a person who respects the overall tradition and pageantry of this sport. So growing up in the rural South, not a lot of folks think like me when it comes to Notre Dame. True story. My favorite experience out of all the places we've been is being able to go and stand on the sideline at Notre Dame Stadium. Someone asked me that on a show the other day. They thought I was going to say LSU or Alabama or Tennessee, and all those places are awesome. But, you know, I'm a kid who grew up, and my impression of Notre Dame was old VHS tapes and the movie Rudy. I know a lot of you have mixed feelings on that movie, but the point is, it's kind of like it is being in a movie scene when you go up there. So I romanticize Notre Dame in my head. And when they lose to Northern Illinois, it sucks. I don't like it. Florida, of course, this is in no particular order. Florida has been a crushing disappointment so far this year. I have, as well as all of you, have had to jump a car off at some point in your life. And sometimes you hook up those red and black jumper cables and you turn it over and it cranks right up and close the hood and you're good to go. You've also been in situations where you hook up the jumper cables to where you think you got a good solid latch and then you go turn it and nothing happens. So what do? Well, you go adjust it and you go turn it this way, 30 degrees, 40 degrees over there that way, and then you turn it over again and it still doesn't work. Then you just keep on rearranging things. And then finally, hopefully, you turn it over and it works. It's not turning over. It's not cranking. I listened to Billy Napier talk about this stuff. I sat there 5 feet from him in Gainesville, and we did the show from there in the spring. He maintained eye contact the entire time because he believed what he was saying. He believed in the moves they had made. He believed in the team. He believed in the coaches and the entire organizational structure that he'd brought into that building. But it hasn't worked. I was listening to his press conference for this week, and he was talking about how as soon as those guys got in the weight room this Monday morning, we're full speed ahead to Mississippi State, and no one's quitting. I was listening to, I believe it was Pete Thamel earlier today, talking about the future of this program, and one of the first things he said is maybe they're not in a hurry to get rid of him because he's still got the locker room. It's like rearranging the jumper cables every week. You just hope eventually whatever you've done, the combination of decisions and moves and changes you've made any given week, you turn the ignition and it starts. They're on the road at Mississippi State this week. They're favored by 6.5 points, I believe, at FanDuel at the moment. And I and the model both like them to win and cover. I have no confidence in saying this whatsoever because I've had no confidence watching them do anything so far this year. Penn State, still undefeated, but that doesn't mean I can't be a little disappointed in you so far this year. Penn State, offensively, surprisingly, is not what I want to talk to you about. They're working on it. Andy Kotelnicki's there. It should take a little time. I think it'll be okay. I think they'll end up being a better offensive product than they have been. But surprisingly, defense has quietly let me down a little bit. Pass rush is not there like I thought it would be. Their safety depth post-injury has taken a really big hit, and they're shaky back there, and I cannot shake the image of Bowling Green moving the ball down the field through the air on them. And, Colin, if you've got their schedule, could you throw that up? And I'm going to explain to you in very simple terms why that concerns me. They're going to go to L.A. next month and play USC. And one of the things I know about Lincoln Riley and his passing attack is it is a level up from Bowling Green, all due respect there. They're going to play Ohio State, ditto. You know, they're going to, if they were to make it to the playoff, anybody they face is going to be able to throw the ball. Now, that's the natural filtration process of being alive that late in the season. So it is, week 4. It's a developmental game. The best teams have in common that they get better and they scale throughout the season. So this is just disappointment so far. This is not me writing you off. Actually, I've written Florida State off. I have not written Penn State off yet. So look at my fingers. They're still crossed. There's still time. There's still plenty of time here. Speaking, though, of the offensive coordinator there at Penn State, Andy Kotelnicki left Kansas, and apparently Jalen Daniels' ability to throw the ball consistently did as well. I mean, they've already lost 2 games. They're a big disappointment to me. Jalen Daniels, the big question around this program was, will he be healthy? Because if he's healthy this year, then they're a contender to win the Big 12. Well, he's healthy, and they're not a contender to win the Big 12. He is just under 55% completion this year so far, and 6 picks. To give you an idea of the impact of losing that coordinator, 55% guy this year with half a dozen picks. 2 years ago, when he was the last time he was a full-year starter, 65% completion and 2 picks the whole year. So it's not the same. It is not the same. The age-old adage in this sport is don't just blindly buy into returning anything. Returning starts, returning experience and production. It's valuable. You certainly want experience over just having a bunch of question marks on your roster, but there's this blind assumption that if anyone returns in this sport, if anyone comes back, they automatically improve 10, 15, 20%. Well, that's not always the case. In fact, the road through a college football season is littered with guys that didn't play as well as they had in previous years. And this is an example, and I'm disappointed in Kansas. And I am a little bit disappointed in Oklahoma State. But Oklahoma State's got a shot to rectify all this Saturday. But I don't know, Jesse, Colin, I mean, we sat here all spring and we talked about how the offensive line was just a bunch of 35-year-old grown men, and Ollie Gordon was returning from having won all these awards last year at tailback, and they can't run the ball. He's averaging 72 yards per game, supposed to be the best running back in the sport. It's the most experienced offensive line I think I've ever seen. These guys all have like a wife and 3 kids and sensible mortgages, and we can't run the ball, or at least we haven't. So they play Utah Saturday. It's one of the games we're going to break down later in the show. And if you're going to get right, you might as well do it against Utah. But I am very disappointed that it's been Alan Bowman throwing the ball. That's actually been how they've been able to come back on Arkansas and gave up over 640 yards in the process defensively, so they needed every one of those points. But I've got some disappointment. I know everyone paints me as a glass half full guy. No, even I get disappointed. The good news for about 4 of these teams is you still got a ton of time to get things right and accomplish all your preseason goals.